How's it going? Dhammapada chapter 14. We have officially made it to Dhammapada chapter 14. I'm pretty happy about it. Give it a second, see if anybody joins in. Maybe I'll chat a little bit. All right, so my name is Vincent Ferrer. I am named after Saint Vincent Ferrer, a saint who lived in about 1375 to 1450, approximately. He was a theologian and a spiritual scientist. Me, myself, I'm a theologian and a polymath. I'm also an energy worker, a devout Christian, a yogi, a Buddhist, a Taoist. Hey, thanks for coming. Welcome. Feel welcome to comment in the chat. So I translated the Dhammapada. Translating the words took me about 8 months. Then I had to digitally remaster all 426 images to all 426 verses. And that took me about 10 months. It ended up being a lot of work. So here we are on Dhammapada chapter 14. Let's see if I can pull it up. I'm going to put it on the screen for you guys so you guys can read as we do. Here we go. So this is the text. You can see chapter 14 is a nice, beautiful image there. And each of these suttas has an image with it. So this image here is the image that goes with the suttas. And each of these 423 lines, Buddha himself is said to have spoken. And I love the way that Buddha speaks. It's so eloquent. It's so insightful. It's so filled with peace and love and consolement. All of his words are just fantastic to hear. Buddha says we're supposed to read the line, know the line, and embody the line's essence. So we'll start now, 179. How can you tempt a Buddha that has disburdened himself of moral weaknesses? How do you pin him down when he is infinite? As I read it, make sure you check out the images. Sutra 180. How can you entice a Buddha that has conquered craving? By what path will you lead him astray? Thanks for coming, guys. Happy to have you. This is an interactive study, so if you have questions or comments on the suttas, please feel free to comment. Sutra 181. Even the gods honor the wise ones who are dedicated to mindfulness and have renounced pleasure for pleasure's sake. 182. It is hard to be born as a human. Life as a mortal is very hard. Harder still is to hear the true eternal law. Hardest is it of all to become an awakened one. Verse 183. To not do any evil, to cultivate good, and to purify your mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. Verse 184. The awakened say the best moral practice is patience, and long-suffering is the highest nirvana. He who injures another is not a contemplative. He who mistreats another is not on the path of the awakened. 185. To do no harm, to not disparage, to practice restraint, to have moderation in your food, to dwell in solitude, and dedicate yourself to higher thought. This is the teachings of the Buddha. 186. You can throw your money at sensual pleasure, but you will not be satisfied. Pleasures of the senses give little satisfaction and much pain. Nothing could be more true than that. 187. Realizing this, the wise do not find satisfaction even in heavenly pleasures. Those who have high knowledge are content with being free from craving. Verse 188. Human beings who tremble in fear seek refuge in mountains, forests, parks, houses, and shrines. 189. Mountains, forests, parks, caves, trees, and temples are not a secure refuge. They are not the supreme refuge. You will not be freed from suffering and stress having gone to such a refuge. 190. The wise go to the Buddha for refuge. They go to the teachings of Buddha. They go to the Buddhist community where they learn about the Four Noble Truths. In life, suffering has a cause, suffering has an end. The way to end suffering is to practice the Eightfold Path. Verse 191. The transcendental wisdom of the Four Noble Truths, suffering, the cause of suffering, the prevention of suffering, and the Eightfold Path that leads to the end of suffering. Verse 192. The triple refuge is totally secure. It is the best refuge. Once you take refuge, you gain freedom from pain and stress. Dukkha. Verse 193. I'm happy that you came too. Thank you so much for buying my book. I really appreciate it. I'm really happy that you came because I was starting to get discouraged. I was starting to think that maybe society wasn't interested in learning these texts or reading them. So I actually got some really good feedback tonight. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Thank you. Verse 193. An awakened one is rare. Where such a wise person is born, that clan prospers. Verse 194. Blessed is the birth of a Buddha. Blessed is the exposition of sacred teachings. Blessed is the community in harmony, and blessed are those who pursue the truth. Verse 195. These drawings, guys, I digitally remastered them by hand. It took me 10 months. So take a look at the drawings. They're so beautifully done. Verse 195. It is wise to find and revere a Buddha or his disciples that have overcome all obstacles and gone beyond pleasure and pain. For one who reveres such peaceful and fearless beings, his cannot be computed or measured. So, in this chapter, I think it's important to understand that there's no place you can go. You can't go to a safe house. You can't go to a shrine. There's no place you can go that's gonna give you ultimate safety or give you freedom from suffering. The only place that you can go to gain freedom from suffering is refuge in the Dharma and the teachings and in yourself. Buddha says, make yourself onto an island that no flood can overwhelm. And the other thing that I think they say is that it is wise to find and revere a Buddha or his disciples that have overcome all obstacles. And here we go, gone beyond pleasure and pain. So when we're dealing with pleasure, the pleasure is ultimately attached to pain. And when we're doing the pleasure, we don't really see the pain when we're in the pleasure. And then to avoid the pain, we keep seeking more and more pleasure. And this leads to stress, pain, illness, disease, all these things. So the Buddhist teachings that you don't run towards pleasure, you don't run from pain, and you have to understand that things come and they go. He says it's better to have one day watching the arising and falling of things than never to live a day at all. So the ending of things, that everything's going to end. Okay, I know everything's impermanent, it's going to end, but how come I'm still suffering? How come I still have anxiety? How come I still don't have inner peace? How come I still get angry? That's because there's a practice that goes along with it. And the practice that goes along with it is mindfulness of body, concentration, vipassana, and satipana. So the first thing that you want to do is feel your body and make your body strong, comfortable, and aware, and develop a deep awareness of your body. As long as you're feeling your body, you'll be conscious in the present moment. The next thing that you want to do is practice concentration, which comes from vipassana. Vipassana is paying attention to the ingoing and outgoing breath without controlling it. This is how the Buddha taught it. Then satipana is paying attention to all the sense data. What's going on in your body, what's going on in the mind, what you're feeling in the five senses, what you're seeing, what you're hearing. And then when you practice all three together, you start to be mindful. But then your effluence, your impurities that are there, they're causing pain. So when you're sitting there like that, you're supposed to accept the pain as purification and not complain about it. And when you do that for longer and longer periods of time, your effluence eventually goes away, your concentration rises, and if you're lucky, you can get to nirvana. But if you continue to fill your senses or your body with things that are impure, you lose your spiritual ground gained. So if you study the sutras on Monday and then on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, watch horror movies on Netflix or, violent movies on Netflix, you're really not going to get anywhere with your practice. So the reason why the Buddhists really emphasize the mindfulness is because you really have to practice mindfulness for long periods of time if you're going to get serious results and get into the jhana states or to nirvana. And if you break too much, you can become back entangled. You might never come back because you're just entangled in the senses all the time and you don't come back to the practice. So that's why they really emphasize practicing the mindfulness. But it's also the study of the suttas. So don't underestimate what even one line of hearing the suttas can do for you, because one line of the sutras that leads you towards peace is better than a million words that are useless or 100 million movies that are pointless. So hearing the sutras is definitely a huge blessing. I'm definitely going to continue the study, guys. I'd like to thank you again because I was starting to get a little bit discouraged, like I said, but I'm going to continue the study. My translation of the Dhammapada, which is an oil paint comparative reasoning translation, it's the only one that has oil paint and comparative reasoning. Let me explain. So most of the Dhammapadas that you look, they'll either have just the verses of the Dhammapada or they'll have the verses of the Dhammapada with a story underneath them or an explanatory underneath them. I do comparative reasoning. So when I do my translations, I use different verses so you can compare without having to go through a long, explanatory verse. And my version is the only version that does that. So thanks for coming, guys. You know what the funny is? Before I went to put on Netflix, because I'm doing some serious solitary detox and cutting out a lot of the television and doing a lot of reading and writing. And when I went to put on the Netflix, it said that my device wasn't on the Netflix anymore. So I had like divine angels like turning off my Netflix so I could study. It was so funny. Oh, and I was like, and then I put the movie on for like 5 minutes, and I was like, I can't. I just can't even. It's like you miss it when it's gone, but then when you watch it, you remember why you're not watching it. It's so pointless and such a waste of time. Be well. Thanks.